It's Lori from Coast to Coast Craft Girls coming to you from the West Coast. Today I wanted to share a really fun pop-up card that I made using the Crafter's Companion Lily Collection paper and a calla lily die embossing folder and stencil set from Lisa Horton. Let me show you how it's made.
So we're going to start with our floral element, and for that I'm using the Lisa Horton calla lily. It's an embossing folder, die, and stencil set, and I'm going to start with my stencil, and this is a sticky mat or a tacky mat. And the Lisa Horton stencils, there's 7 in this set, and they have this peg system that goes on to onto the Ultimate, the Lisa Horton Ultimate, which is, if you've never used it, it's amazing. With this, if you're stenciling, it just makes it foolproof to get it in the right place. And I gotta get some, since I cut my paper, I want to get it in the right spot. Make sure I have plenty of space. Okay, there we go. So the tacky mat will hold my cardstock, and that's just white Nina cardstock. And I'm going to use my little finger daubers to do my inking, mostly because I'm going to do some shading. So I'm going to start with Grasshopper, yes, which is a Spectrum Noir water reactive ink. You just want to be careful on these little pieces where you don't go this way and pull up that that little piece that's coming down. So just kind of follow the stencil so you're not pulling it up off the cardstock. You don't have to use, this system helps hold it in place. You don't really have to use any adhesive, which is really nice. So I've got most of my green. Now I'm going to come back in with the Pine Tree, which is the next darker green. And I'm just going to pull a little bit of shadow here and there. And just so that it's not all one solid color. That just makes it look a little more realistic, or okay. So that's that stencil. And now see, you can see how this is going to work. The tacky mat's holding my card down. Take my stencil off, and I'm going to set that aside so I can wash it. And stencil number 2 is the bow that goes on there. And you can see just how it makes it foolproof in getting it lined up in the right spot. And I'm going to do my bow in pink. And this is pink tulip, to be specific. Okay. Pull that stencil up. And my next one is my second layer of my bow. Now normally you would use a different color, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to use that same pink, but I'm just going to put a second coat on, and that will darken it, but leave the tone and the color exactly the same. And it'll give you some nice shading without actually using multiple colors of ink. And you'll see what I mean in just one second when I pull that off of there. So you can see that I've got some nice shading on there, and that was just one ink pad. And now we've got our base calla lilies, and I'm going to do something similar with those. I'm going to use the yellows. This is straw bale, which is the lightest of the yellows, and this first layer I'm going to just put on a very, very light coat, just kind of around the edges, because I want these to have a little bit of a, not yellow, but kind of a whitish yellow. So I don't want it white, and I want some definition in the flower, but I don't want them solid yellow. So we're just going to kind of go around the edges. And you can see just a hint of an outline there. We've got our next, and I'm going to do something similar here. I'm just going to come back with the same color, but just a little bit darker. And again, I'm not going to make them solid yellow. I'm going to leave a little bit of white for some highlights in there. And now you can see we've got some highlights in the leaves and in the bow. And I'm going to come back with my pine tree for the leaves. And I've already got some good shading on there, so I'm not too worried about putting too much on there. And I'm going to just come back with that same pink tulip on the bow. And again, just deepen that color just a little bit. So you get 3 tones of pink just from the same ink pad by just layering the color. And then I'm going to go with Lemon Tonic, the middle yellow. Oops, sorry about that, from my flowers. Okay. That's pretty good. You can see what I mean with that bow. I've now got 3 colors of pink just from one. And the last one is just the very centers of those calla lilies. And we're going to go with our honey pot, our darkest kind of goldy yellow. And we're really going to deepen those because those I want to stand out. Those are those darky, goldy yellow stamens in the middle. That's the last stencil. And you can see how well that works. And I'm going to peel that off of there. Put my sticky mat cover back on. Always recover your tacky mats when you're done with them. Okay, I'm done with this one. And now I'm going to go ahead and die cut this. And then I'm going to emboss it. That's how the system works. And I guess you can die cut first, then stencil, or I don't know. This is the way that I do it, the order that I do it in. You just want to line up your die, matching your inking. It's actually pretty easy to do. Let me run that through. Okay, so there's my die cut. Let me get the ink on my mat. And then now that I've got my ink done and my die cut done, and it looks beautiful just as it is, but just wait. And then you want to make sure you get this in the right side of your stencil or your embossing folder. So this part is raised, so that's going to push up through the card. So I want my inked side on the side that when you rub your finger over it, it goes down. So you want your inked side against the part that goes down. And that will give you an emboss as opposed to a deboss. And you just line it up. Let me get my camera here. and you can see through the embossing folder, so it makes it pretty easy to do. And once you get it lined up, just hold on to it, and we're going to run it through our machine. Okay. And you can see once it's embossed how much more dimension you get on that. Isn't that pretty? It's gorgeous. Looks like I might have had my bow off slightly. I think I told you that, so these are 3D embossing folders, and I use a Gemini MIDI a lot for my embossing folders. And this one, even though it's a 3D folder, you definitely do have to use a shim with it. Without a shim, it doesn't give you as good of an emboss. So there's my topper. So I'm going to set that to one side, and we're going to make the card itself. So I'll get my card in here. So I started with a 6x12 sheet of white cardstock. So 6x12. I scored at 3 and at 6. And then I marked at 9 here and here. Rotate it and mark at 3 there. Okay. Then you're going to score from that. So if you're here, that 9-inch mark, you're going to score from that 9-inch mark. And this is where that black line on your scoreboard helps a lot. Down to that 3-inch score. So down that way. Okay. And then you're going to rotate it and do the same thing on the other side. So from the 3-inch score down to the 9-inch mark. Okay. Just like that. And then you've got that little mark in the center up there. And that's your scoring. Then you're going to take, and you can take a paper trimmer, a guillotine, whatever works for you. And you're going to cut off from that little mark, center mark on this piece. So you can see here. So you got your 3 and your 6-inch score, your X scored there, and that's your little 3-inch mark at the far end. So you're going to cut from there down to this score line on both sides. So whatever's the easiest way for you to do that. You're basically going to create the little, or cut those little triangles off on both sides, because you're creating that diamond at the top. So there's my little diamond. I don't need this. And then you're going to fold at the 3-inch that way. And then this way, you're going to fold those. I'll do it this way, and then, so you're going to kind of fold across, and then down. So you create that. Just like that. Okay? Just like that. All right. So go ahead and fold and burnish those. And we're going to burnish our little 3-inch score line as well. And that's essentially your card. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put adhesive on here. I'm going to go ahead and matte and layer these while it's still flat, because I think that will be easier. So to create your mattes and layers, I'll leave you with them. Oh, they're there. This piece is easy because it's 3x6. So I've got a sheet of, cardstock. And then this paper is from the Crafter's Companion Lily collection. It's much easier to matte and layer this when it's flat before you put it up. And if you had, if this is going to glue down to there, if you had glued that down and then you're trying to matte these little triangles, it's just easier to do it like that. Don't worry about matting and layering this piece because it's not going to show. And then for this piece, the way that you do that is, you know that you started with a 6x6 piece, a 6x6 section. So this is your 6x6 square. So I cut my, essentially a 6x6 square. It's just shy of 6. And then I want to cut those corners off so that it's a diamond, right? So because it's not quite 6, it's a little bit hard, at least for me, to measure. So what I did is I just kind of bent it without putting a complete crease in it, and I just creased the little corners both directions, and then put a little pencil mark, and then that will let me cut those corners off nice and easy. And it's easy to flatten because I didn't really crease it hard. If you are good at math, I guess you can measure it and figure it out, and I'm actually good at math, but it comes down to like 7/8 or 1/8 of inches, and it's just easier to do it this way. So we're going to cut all 4 corners off. And for the green card, obviously it's much easier to do this by just creating a square, because it's just a square. But if you had patterned paper, it's harder to do that, right? Because I want my pattern to be this way, so I want my square to be sideways, and I want those corners to go here anyway. So now I've got my little corners that will fit right in there. Okay, and I needed 4 of them, so that's perfect. So could you do it differently? Sure. You could make a 4-inch, or however what big that is. What is that? Is it a 4-inch square? It's 4 3/8. And you could do a 4 3/8 inch square, but then you got to cut these little corners, which are essentially from a 6x6 square anyway. So if I do it the way that I just did it, I get my square and I get my corners, although I'm going to have to trim these down a little bit. I'm just going to take a little slice off of them. Yep, that's enough. So I'm just taking about 1/8 of an inch off the long side. Okay, so there's my little triangles. Those will fill those 4 because I want to mat and layer those too. Then I did the same thing with my lily paper. And again, I did it this way because I want to make sure that the pattern is going this way. If you just cut a 4-inch square this way, then when you tilt it, the pattern is sideways, right? And this also gives me my perfect triangles. So see, that gives me my perfect size square, but on the corner, on the angle. So I get the pattern going this way, which is exactly what I want. And so it's going to go like that. And then I'm going to trim that 1/8 of an inch off of each of these. And this is going to be oriented correctly as well because I cut them. Actually, I might flip those over and use the back side. I'll decide in a minute. Okay, so I've got these all mat and layered, and now I'm going to create my card. And basically, you want to give these a really good burnish. And you're going to put glue just on this triangle right here. So let me do that. You can use red liner tape or whatever, but I'm going to use tacky glue. And we're just going to fold that flat. Wait for it to grab. Put my glue way. Okay, and that's really your card. And then you attach, and you got to make sure these are good and burnished, because otherwise it's just gonna, you know, do this, and you don't want that. So give those a good burnish. And it'll fold flat, and then it pops up and stands nicely. And then I'm going to put my calla lilies on there with some 3D Collal glue. And I'm going to use quite a bit because I want it to be, you know, quite raised off the card base itself. So just like that. And we're done. Isn't that beautiful? And it's just a really fun card shape. Now, I have done it where I've glued these pieces down, and I'll show you one that I made that way. So this one I glued down on the back, and I did that because I wanted it to sit a little bit lower. And what you can do is you can kind of bow that front, you know, so that it's a little rounded. And I kind of like the looks of that too. And I'll put both of them in here so you can see the difference. So I will, let me hold them so that they're, so if that was, you know, if they were flat on the ground, they'd look like that. Whereas this one's more popped up. This one's flatter, but it's got that bow to it. I will tell you too, on this one, this is the one you saw me make with the stencils and then the die and then the embossing folder. This one, I just die cut it and embossed, and I didn't use the stencils. After it was embossed, I just used my inks and then my aqua pen to kind of put in those stamens, but I just used my inks on there. So you can see the difference between using a stencil and not as well, in case you want to, you know, what you think of that. I honestly kind of like them. I like them both. This one has more detail to it with the, you know, the highlights in the petals, but I kind of like the softness of that one where it's not stenciled. So anyway, just two different looks. Basically the same card, just the difference of gluing down those backs or not gives you that flatter, more rounded front versus more popped up. So thanks for watching.